Your baby is watching you right now, maybe while you're warming a bottle, or while you're distracted by your phone for 3 seconds, or while you're having a quiet argument with someone across the room. They're watching, and they're reading something you never realized you were broadcasting. There's a feeling a lot of parents carry around but rarely say out loud. It sits somewhere between wonder and unease. You look at this tiny person and you think, how much do they actually understand? Are they just reacting to sounds and lights and hunger, or is something more complicated happening in there? That question matters more than most parenting conversations give it credit for, because the answer changes everything about how you see those early months. What researchers have found over the last 2 decades is that infants are doing something far more sophisticated than most adults assume. They're not just sensing the world, they're analyzing it. And one of the things they analyze with surprising precision is the inner life of the people around them, not what those people say, what those people mean, what those people feel, what those people intend to do next. This video is about 7 specific ways your baby reads the intentions behind your actions, not guesses, not instincts. Actual cognitive processes that developmental psychologists have been studying in controlled lab settings, with results that kept surprising even the researchers running the experiments. By the time you finish watching, you're going to see your baby's behavior differently. Some things that seemed random are going to make a lot more sense, and some things you do without thinking are going to carry more weight than you expected. There's also something in here that nobody tells you directly, but that the science makes pretty clear. The way your baby reads you in these early months isn't just a survival mechanism, it's the foundation of how they learn to understand other people for the rest of their life. That starts now, with you. In the ordinary moments you don't think twice about. One more thing before we get into it. If what you feel when you watch your baby isn't just love but also a quiet pressure, like you're somehow already getting things wrong without knowing how, that feeling is worth naming. It's real. It's common. And understanding what your baby is actually doing in those moments is one of the best ways to ease it, because knowledge tends to replace anxiety with something more useful. Let's start with the first 2 ways. The first one involves something so simple that it almost seems too obvious to be interesting. When you reach for an object with your hand open and your fingers extended toward it, your baby as young as 6 months old doesn't just see a hand moving through space. They register that you are trying to get that object. They understand the goal. Researchers at the University of British Columbia demonstrated this in a series of experiments where infants watched an adult reach repeatedly for the same toy. Then the toy was moved. The infants looked significantly longer when the adult reached for the old location instead of the new one, as if they were surprised the adult wasn't updating their goal. 6 months old, not speaking, not walking, already tracking what someone is trying to accomplish and expecting them to update that goal based on new information. The second way is stranger and more personal. Your baby reads the difference between when you do something on purpose and when it happens by accident. A study published in 2004 by researchers Gergely, Beckering, and Corrali showed that 14-month-olds imitated an adult's intentional actions very differently from accidental ones. When an adult clearly meant to do something, babies copied the exact method. When the adult seemed to do something by mistake, babies found a simpler way to get the same result, as if they understood there was no reason to copy the error. They weren't just watching what you do, and they were watching why you did it, and adjusting accordingly. That distinction between intentional and accidental is one of the early building blocks of moral reasoning. Before your baby can talk, they are already building a mental model of what it means to mean something. The third way your baby reads your intentions has to do with your face, but not the way most people think. It's not about smiling more or frowning less. It's about something called social referencing, and it happens in a very specific kind of moment. When your baby encounters something new, something uncertain, something that could be interesting or could be dangerous, they look at your face, not to see if you're happy, to gather information. They're asking, without words, whether this new thing is safe to approach or worth avoiding. Research from the 1980s by Source, Emda, Klinert, and Campos placed 12-month-old infants in front of a visual cliff, a glass surface that appeared to drop off sharply. When mothers showed a fearful expression, nearly every infant refused to cross. When mothers showed a happy expression, most crossed. Your face, in those moments of ambiguity, is your baby's primary data source about the nature of reality. Not what you say, what your face does. The fourth way follows directly from that. Your baby doesn't just read your emotional expression once and move on. They track the relationship between what you feel and what caused it. Developmental psychologist Paul Bloom at Yale has written extensively about how infants connect emotional reactions to their sources, building an early map of what in the world is good, what is bad, and why the people around them respond the way they do. By 10 months, babies begin to expect that people who share their preferences will also share their emotional reactions to things. They're not just reading your face, they're building a theory about your inner world, a theory they update every time they observe you reacting to something. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who takes this seriously. That matters. If this kind of content is useful to you, subscribing means you'll keep getting it as we go deeper into how the early mind actually works. Now the fifth way, and this one tends to catch parents off guard. Your baby watches what you pay attention to, and they use that to figure out what you're communicating to them specifically. This is called joint attention, and it emerges around 9 to 12 months. When you look at something and then look back at your baby, they follow your gaze to the object, and they understand that you are trying to share that object with them mentally. You're saying, without words, look at this. This matters. This is worth your attention too. But here's the part that surprises people. Research by developmental psychologist Michael Tomasello at the Max Planck Institute shows that babies don't just follow your gaze mechanically. They check your face afterward to see if you intended for them to look there, or if you just happen to look that direction. If you look at something deliberately, they look at it and check back with you. If you look at something accidentally, they're less likely to treat it as a shared reference. They are distinguishing between accidental gaze and intentional communication at less than a year old. The sixth way is about something that happens when things go wrong between you and your baby. When you miss a cue, when you're distracted, when you respond to the wrong thing at the wrong time. What your baby does in that moment is not just frustration, it's a specific kind of cognitive and emotional processing. Research on the still face paradigm, developed by pediatrician Edward Tronick at Harvard in the 1970s, showed that when a mother suddenly becomes emotionally unresponsive, her face still but blank, infants as young as 2 months engage in a predictable sequence. First, they try harder to re-engage. They gesture, they vocalize, they make eye contact more intensely. When that fails, they look away. They pull inward. Their stress hormones rise. What's happening isn't just that they miss connection. They're experiencing a violation of expected responsiveness. They had a model of how you respond to them, and that model broke. The recovery when you re-engage matters just as much as the rupture itself. The return to connection is something babies track and remember. This is also the research that gave us what's now called the repair cycle, which child development specialists consider one of the most important concepts in early attachment. Not getting it right every time, getting it right enough, and coming back when you don't. The seventh way your baby reads your intentions is the one that carries the most weight, and it's about the most ordinary thing imaginable. Your baby watches whether your actions match your expressions. Whether what you do lines up with how you seem to feel about doing it. Research from the Max Planck Institute and replicated in several labs since shows that infants as young as 8 months begin to notice incongruence between tone, expression, and action. If you hand them something while looking reluctant, they respond differently than if you hand them the same thing while looking willing. They are reading authenticity before they have any word for it. What this means practically is not that you need to perform enthusiasm you don't feel. It means that your baby is already building a model of you as a person with an inner life, and that model is built from the coherence between your actions and your expressions. When those align, even in quiet or tired or ordinary moments, the signal is clear. When they don't, babies don't ignore it. They file it. None of this is a reason to feel watched in a way that makes you anxious. It's a reason to feel something closer to awe. The mind in front of you, the one that can't tie its shoes or say your name yet, is already doing cognitive work that took scientists decades to describe and measure. The situation you started this video in, wondering how much your baby actually understands, has a clearer answer now. They understand more than you can see from the outside. They're reading your goals when you reach for things. They're distinguishing your accidents from your intentions. They're using your face as a compass in uncertain territory. They're building a model of your emotional inner world and updating it constantly. They're tracking where your attention goes and whether it's meant for them. They're processing the moments when you disconnect and monitoring for your return. And they're reading whether what you feel matches what you do. That's not instinct, that's intelligence. And it starts in the first weeks of life, in the quiet moments between the scheduled things, in exactly the kind of ordinary interaction you're going to have with them today. You don't need to be a perfect parent. You never did. You need to be a present one, curious about what's happening in that small mind, willing to show up and come back when you drift. That's what the research points to, across every one of these 7 findings. It's not the performance of attentiveness, it's the genuine article. If this gave you something useful today, consider sharing it with someone who's in those early months right now. The parents who need this information most are often the ones too tired to search for it. And if you want to keep going deeper into how the early mind works, subscribing means you'll be there when the next one comes out.